On Larry King Now, leadership and communication expert Simon Sinek.
Every single one of us knows what we do. Some of us know how we do it, the things that make us stand out or distinguish us from our competition. But very, very few people can clearly articulate why they do what they do. I think feeling fulfilled and loving our work is a right and not a privilege, that we should demand it of our leaders, that they provide an environment that we enjoy coming to work to every day. And if we are the leaders, that we should be providing those environments.
What do good leaders have in common?
They have the courage to do the right thing. They're people of high character and high integrity. But for me, the big one is courage. It's very hard to be a leader.
Plus,
I don't think it's that we need more female leaders. It's that we need more leaders who act like females, and women just happen to be better at that.
all next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Our special guest is Simon Sinek. There's no one quite like him. Motivational speaker, ethnographer, and the author of 3 New York Times bestsellers. Start with Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. Leaders Eat Last, Why Some Teams Pull Together and Some Don't. And his latest book, Together is Better, a little book of inspiration. Simon's TED Talk on the concept of why is the 3rd most watched of all time. His website is startwithwhy.com. And when I was a kid, no one wanted to be an ethnographer. None of my guys in Brooklyn ever said, boy, would I love to be an ethnographer.
I mean, I tripped over it in college. I didn't even know anthropology existed when I was in college. I had a professor who was inspiring, and then I was an anthro major. And where my colleagues were interested in sort of the bongo and dying Amazonian tribes, my interest was Western urban culture. And because I live in Western urban culture, it was a good technique to learn how to interview people and listen. And
how do ethnographers make money?
I don't. Well, there's a huge group of them now who work in advertising. Marketers have really glommed on to ethnographers and anthropologists, so they've actually found a living in the commercial world, believe it or not.
So you chose, your route was writing, right?
I fell into it. I'd never aspired to be a writer. I had never really written anything of particular length. But I had this idea a bunch of years ago, which even that was something I discovered. It came at a period in my life where I had a lot of pain. I'd fell out of love with my work. I lost my passion. And it was a really dark time. And superficially, everything was good. And so I pretended that I was happy. All of my energy went into pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I actually felt.
You knew you were pretending.
Oh, yeah. And it was a hard way to live. And it wasn't until a very close friend of mine came to me concerned that I wasn't myself, did that give me the courage to find a solution. And the solution that I found was this naturally occurring biological pattern. Every single one of us knows what we do. I mean, you can tell me what you do, I can tell you what I do. Some of us know how we do it, the things that make us stand out or distinguish us from our competition. But very, very few people can clearly articulate why they do what they do. That purpose, cause, or belief that underlies our work when we are passionate. And I didn't know why I did what I did. And so I set out to answer that question. Upon answering that question, it restored my passion to levels I'd never experienced before. And people just kept inviting me to talk about this thing. And at some point, somebody said, you should write about it. I said, okay. Somebody introduced me to Adrian Zackheim, who's the god of business publishing, the original publisher from Good to Great. I had a 29-minute meeting with Adrian, and 3 days later, he offered me a book deal. And so I wrote because I had a contract that told me I had to write, so that's how I wrote a book.
He gave you 30 minutes and you used 29.
He gave me 30 minutes, I used 29.
So the idea is to be fulfilled by your work?
I think fulfillment is a right and not a privilege. It's so common that we go out for dinner with our friends and somebody at the dinner table will say, I love my job, and the rest of us go, oh, you're so lucky, like they won some sort of lottery. I think feeling fulfilled and loving our work is a right and not a privilege, that we should demand it of our leaders, that they provide an environment that we enjoy coming to work to every day. And if we are the leaders, that we should be providing those environments.
Can this apply to an assembly line worker at General Motors?
Oh, 100%.
Puts a car together all day.
It has nothing.
In fact, all he does is do the wrenching on the tires.
I can give you lists of companies. Barry Waymiller, based in St. Louis, is a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing company, where I've walked the factory floor, and I meet people who just who glow with love for their job and their fellow colleagues. There's a company called the Luck Companies based in Dulles, and they own quarries. So these guys smash rocks. I mean, that's what they do. They put a stick of dynamite in a hole, it blows big boulders, and they smash them into little rocks. That's their job. And I sat down with them, and I said, so tell me, what makes working at Luck so wonderful? And one of them, every stereotype that you have in your head is, that's exactly what he looked like, this big guy with a baseball cap and dip, and he looks at me and he goes, well, I've really learned to connect with my feelings and express, to both my colleagues and my family how I feel. And it just is amazing. And they love their work. And I know plenty of people in white-collar jobs and bankers and doctors who hate their jobs and take pills to get through the day. So, let us not judge whether somebody's happy or unfulfilled based on what they do, but it's...
Are you saying it all begins at the top?
It doesn't have to. It's more efficient when it does. And leaders are responsible for setting the conditions inside the company. But when there's substandard leadership, which unfortunately is more common than I'd like it to be, then there can be good pockets of leadership within the organization. So you have pockets of people who are fulfilled.
What if I can't answer the question? I've always loved what I do. I like going. I don't even call it work.
I think
60 years. The last time I worked was a helper on a United Parcel truck. I was 22. And
so from my perspective, that you love your job and you love your work and you don't consider it work, isn't that horrible that work is pejorative, that you say, I don't even consider it work? My interest is understanding the underlying motivation that you happen to have found the thing that connects to what naturally inspires
but
you.
I never wanted to do anything else.
It's wonderful.
But that's a gift, right? I'm from somewhere.
I think there's a bit of luck in there as too.
Yeah. Left turn, right turn, yeah. But I wanted it.
Yeah, and that you knew at a young age is really special. But people can find that direction at any point in their life.
A lot of your wonderful book, and it is a wonderful book.
Thank you.
Talks about togetherness and teamwork. The great Michael Jordan was told once when he was scoring 45 points a game, there is no I in the word team. And his response was, there is in the word win. Would you contradict that?
There are always stars, but I think that any star would be foolish to think that they got there by themselves, whether it was supportive family, supportive coaches, whether it was the teammates willing to pass them the ball as opposed to keep the ball to themselves. If you have somebody who's naturally good at a job, then we want to put them in a position of strength. And so you want to surround them with people who will all shine together. So both statements are right. Both statements are right. I think this is one of the paradoxes of being human, right? Which is we are at all times both individuals and members of groups. And at all times, every single day, we have to grapple with, do I do this for me, or do I do this for the group? And I think they're both right. The question is the balance.
Our guest is Simon Sinek. Up next, what's his take on the millennial generation? Is it different from any other? And the key to strong leadership. The book is Together is Better. Stay with us. This is a terrific book. Simon Sinek, Together is Better, a little book of inspiration. Illustrations by Ethan Aldridge.
Yep, he's wonderful.
There's even a page where you scratch the page and it makes you feel better.
It smells like optimism.
Hard to be an optimist?
I don't think so. I think...
When you look at the world?
I think the world is okay.
You do?
The world has its issues, like every one of it. Like we have our issues. But I think so much of the world is what we choose to see and the perspective we choose to have.
Well, a lot is going on in America right now. Mm-hmm. What about people who are so disappointed in the election that it affects them every day?
So one of the things that I think that's really fantastic that's come out of this election is that we now have people getting involved, not like they ever have, probably not since Vietnam. When the first travel ban was announced, across the whole nation, people's inclination was to get in a train, get in the car, get in a taxi, and go to the airport. Blacks, whites, Asians, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and they showed up in the airport together in support of acceptance. And it was, I have to say, it brought a tear to my eye to see Americans actually get out and do something as opposed to tweeting something, which is what we've become. We've sort of become a nation of slacktivists. So it was really kind of nice to see America spend the energy to physically show up and do something that represents what they stand for.
Millennials get a bad rap, being entitled, unfocused. You say that's not true.
Every single generation is affected by whatever's going on in the world during their formative years. So if somebody grew up during the Great Depression or the Second World War, they may grow up to be miserly, for example, or frugal, wanting to squeeze every drip of toothpaste out of the tube. Well, of course, it's because they grew up during, rations. Of course they're going to be like that. Well, likewise, this generation that grew up during the turn of the millennium, they came of age at the millennium, grew up in a time of technology that we didn't have. And it's had an effect on how they view the world. Some of it positive, some of it more challenging. My biggest concern is the unfettered access to social media and cell phones, quite frankly, because there's a biology to these things that are as addictive as alcohol, nicotine, and gambling.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I don't have a cell phone. I have a flip phone.
Which is wonderful.
It's all I use it for is to talk.
Yeah.
I like the sound of the voice. Why has it overtaken us? In other words, I deliberately will not have it because I know I'd be addicted.
It's about balance. It's not that they're inherently bad, and it's not that texting or social media is inherently bad, but it's when it gets out of balance. If somebody carries their phone wherever they go, like they physically feel anxiety if they put it down, when they're with their friends and have to have it up the entire time looking at the phone while they're with their friends, when they wake up in the morning and check their phone before they say good morning to the person sleeping next to them, these are problems. This is out of balance.
What do they do for it, though? There's centers where you go for drug addiction and alcohol addiction. Is there a center now for...
There's starting to be, but it's not yet officially recognized as an addiction in this country. And so we don't treat it as an addiction. We don't even recognize it as an addiction. So we accuse more, all generations, but it's exaggerated in the millennial generation for being entitled or whatever other...
Will we have to deal then with withdrawal?
Yes. I mean, that's just like any addiction. You're going to go through withdrawal before you find health again.
What do good leaders have in common?
They have the courage to do the right thing. They're people of high character and high integrity. But for me, the big one is courage. It's very hard to be a leader. It's hard to speak truth to power very often. You might be the one that gets in trouble or lose your job. It's hard to do the right thing. It's much easier to do the expedient thing. And it's also a huge undertaking to be a leader every moment of every day. It's kind of like being a parent.
You think President Trump has leadership skills? Obviously, he was successful in one area.
He has the ability to rally people for sure. And I think it's an open question, his ability to inspire a nation, whether versus just rallying parts of us, but to inspire a nation and bring us together and empower us to take responsibility and take care of each other.
Leadership styles.
Yeah.
I'll mention some people. I've interviewed these people. Steve Jobs.
He was a hard man, but he gave people the opportunity to be a part of something much bigger than themselves. And though people who worked at Apple in those days said that it was hard to work for Steve, I don't think anybody regretted working for Steve. I think
Richard Branson.
Wonderful, definitely great guy, definitely a visionary. I had the opportunity to ask him, how should we judge you when you die? I said, what did you build at Virgin that we should remember you by? Like, what are you proudest of? And he said simply, don't ever judge me by anything that I've built at Virgin. He said, judge me by the quality of my children.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Again, has vision, understands what it means to take a vision and carry it into the future, and is people-focused, which I love.
Oprah.
I think we all love Oprah.
Why? Why do we all love Oprah?
We all love Oprah because Oprah, again, in good leadership fashion, is inclusive and gives us something to belong to. She sets clear vision and optimism, and she encourages us to take care of ourselves and each other. It's not about following her, but rather how she can clear a path that we can take care of ourselves.
Should men and women lead differently? We're discussing the gender gap and working through fear after the break. We're back with Simon Sinek. The book Together is Better. Do men and women lead in different ways?
They do lead in different ways.
Now, women are become more leader conscious than when I was a kid.
Yeah. I don't think it's that we need more female leaders. It's that we need more leaders who act like females, and women just happen to be better at that. For too long, we've focused our attention. We falsely believe that all of leadership is about aggression and decisiveness, which are traditionally male attributes, whereas true leadership also includes things like empathy, patience, caring, which are traditionally female characteristics. So you need a balance of both. The great leaders have both. It's not one or the other. But I think the great thing is that is we live in a day and an age where women don't have to pretend to be like men anymore. They can be feminine and be leaders, and I love that.
You said we need a new industry called Help Others industry.
That's true.
How does that work?
We have an entire section in the bookshop called Self-Help, and there's no section in the bookshop called Help Others. And we've become a very selfish society, preoccupied with ourselves. You know, how do I lose 10 pounds? How can I find the job of my dreams? How do I find the perfect mate? Yet, human beings thrive and succeed because we're social animals, and we need each other. And so we have to learn to actually take care of each other to find the fulfillment and joy that we want ourselves in life. So it's not how can I lose 10 pounds, it's how can I help my friend live a healthy life? How can I help my friend find the job of their dreams? How can I help my friend fall in love? And it's the act of service that actually helps us find joy in our lives. And I think we've become a little selfish. The balance is a little tipped one way.
Empathy gets tossed around now.
And it's a good thing. You know, you've interviewed over the years, you know, people in uniform, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and some of the ones that I've had the privilege to meet, ones that you and I would call heroes, who did risk their lives. They will tell you that the greatest asset that they have is not their training or their ability to use the weapons that they have, but it's empathy and it's love and care for each other. I had an opportunity to spend some time with the Navy SEALs, and what I learned about the SEALs is that core to being a SEAL is the ability to care for each other with an intensity that others cannot muster. That's what makes a SEAL. It's not bravado and brawn. It's the intense empathy and love they have for each other. Marines, you know, my friend Lieutenant General George Flynn, he says that the strength of the Marines comes from love of country, love of corps, love of your fellow Marine. It's these very sort of flowery things that actually the core of greatness.
Yeah, it's very true. I interviewed him. When you do a lot of interviews, you forget, but this guy won the Medal of Honor, Congressional Medal of Honor. He attacked a German nest of machine guns. He was AWOL while in the Army. He was demoted from corporal to private. He was a terrible soldier. And the guy said, "You will never amount to anything." They were trapped. He picked up two guns and attacked this German thing because his friends were in trouble, and he wiped out a whole division.
Amazing.
He didn't know why he did it.
But you hear it all the time. You know, it's not God and country. It's guy to the left and guy to the right, and you risk your life for guy to the left and guy to the right.
So how do you define success?
I think success is seeing those around you work to their natural best and creating a momentum for a vision, towards a vision that will last beyond yourself.
So a guy is driving a bus for 20 years, got to retire. He's on Madison Avenue in New York, packed every day as people getting on that bus and getting off. He has 2 kids, a wife, lives in Queens. He might call himself successful. Another guy might be vice president of that company who would call himself unsuccessful. So is success what you make of it?
So the success is defined. Success is a feeling. It's not a series of check marks and goals. I think people define success as finish lines. You know, I ran a marathon, I'm successful. The question is, A, why did you run the marathon? And what happens after you've completed the marathon? Do you just keep running marathons? What happens if you break your leg and you can no longer run marathons? You know, a lot of people set financial goals. I'm successful when I make my first million. Okay, now I have to make my second million. Success is a feeling, and it's the feeling of contribution. So your bus driver in Queens, if he has decided that his job as a bus driver is to ensure that everyone who gets on his bus feels better about themselves because they got on his bus and not another bus. And so he greets them with a smile, he says good morning, he says goodbye. that people will remember that ride that they took with him, versus this vice president of the company who's made it about himself and his financial goals. He's the one who's unhappy, as opposed to seeing those around him succeed and those around him go home with a love of their day, because they come to work in his company every day. So I still believe success and good leadership are about service to others.
How do you work through fears? Everybody has fears, right? So you're an optimist.
I am, but
you must fear things.
Of course I fear things. Of course I fear things. And the way you manage fear is again, it's having someone near you who you can turn to and say, I'm scared. It's when we bottle things up and pretend that we've got everything under control that it starts to eat away at us. This is what a healthy corporate environment is. A healthy corporate environment is one in which people feel safe enough to raise their hand, walk into their boss's office and say, I'm scared, or I feel underqualified or ill-equipped for this job that you've given me, or I made a mistake. That's one that we don't like to do for fear that we're going to be put on the chopping block.
But it's also the best way to gain the moment.
To gain the moment.
I made a mistake.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
The kid who threw the baseball through the neighbor's window, if he tells his father, I threw a baseball through the neighbor's, it's a lot better than the neighbor coming in to say, your kid threw a baseball through the window.
And we learn lessons when things go wrong, not when things go right.
Simon will answer some of your social media questions in our final segment, plus a game of If You Only Knew. The book Together is Better. The guest is Simon Sinek. We'll be right back. Back with Simon Sinek. The book is Together is Better. A couple social media questions. Betsy Sullivan, what advice do you have for millennials trying to navigate today's workforce?
So one of the things is to be yourself. It's to be honest. It's to speak up. I think one of the mistakes that millennials make is they put on these hard exteriors where they know all the answers. They think they have to know all the answers, and so people don't rush to their help because we don't think they need help because they seem to know everything. There's something really special about being really junior and saying, "Can you please help me?" or "I don't know what I'm doing," or "I made a mistake." So I think take the risk of asking others for help.
Patrick Healings wants to know, what advice do you have for President Trump?
I think that he has an amazing opportunity. He's been given this incredible opportunity to lead one of, if not the greatest nation in the world. We're an enterprising people, and sort of work with people. I think the opportunity for Donald Trump is to work with us, not against us.
Anish Frederick Potter asked, don't you think this country maybe needs a little less motivation?
I think one of the things that distinguishes America from other nations is the fact that we're an entrepreneurial nation. If you think about all the inventions that have come out of this country. And the thing that I love about America is we love that people try. If you're an entrepreneur and you failed, there's no shame in that. We love the person that tries. In Europe, if you try and fail, it's shameful. And so I've met so many entrepreneurs where they're actually much more afraid of failing, where here the risk profile is a lot higher. I think it's wonderful.
At Prayer77 tweets, how do you come up with an idea for a bestseller and make it happen?
It's not. I didn't certainly come up with an idea for a bestseller. I had an idea that resonated with me, it resonated with my friends, and it so happened that people wanted to read about it. I didn't set out to write a bestseller. I got very lucky that the books sold as well as they did.
But you needed a publisher who believed in you.
I was surrounded by people who believed in me, and my publisher took a big bet on me.
So we all need other people. I needed a guy to hire me. I needed Ted Turner to.
And you needed somebody to give you your first chance and put you on the air and take a risk on you and give you advice and tell you when you screwed up, and yeah, that's what we all needed. I'll take credit for one thing, which is when there were two publishers who were interested in me, and I fell in love with Adrian because he believed in me and he wasn't interested in proposals or anything. He met me and he says, let's give this a whirl. Whereas the other publisher wanted me to write chapters and they wanted to double check everything. And I chose to go with the person, not follow the money. I didn't play them against each other. I just wanted to be with the guy who was going to take a risk on me because I knew that, I needed him.
We play a little game of If You Only Knew. I just throw some questions at you. What never fails to make you feel happier?
I love my niece and nephew. They're the best.
secret talent?
I take photographs. I'm a fairly active photographer. Yeah.
That's interesting. Guilty pleasure.
I can stay home for like an entire weekend and never go out and love every moment of it.
Biggest risk you've ever taken?
I completely changed the course of my life and career when I discovered this thing called the why. I abandoned what I was doing and said I want to do that. And people thought I was crazy. They thought I went out of business. But I believed in it so much, I threw caution into the wind.
I think why has been the key my whole life, the word why.
It's a little kid question that we grow out of for some reason.
Why? Who would you trade places with for a day?
For a day? I think it would be interesting to be in a senior government position, head of the CIA or something for a day, just to know all the, get the file on Area 51.
Most innovative organization in America right now?
I think the DoD. I think the Air Force, the Marines, the Army, the Navy. I think some of the stuff that they do is pretty spectacular.
Really, that impressive. So a lot of people are anti-military.
Look, I'm anti-war. And it turns out so are those who wear the uniform and have to go. War is a political thing. If you don't like war, take it up with a politician.
I had a general tell me once, no one hates war more than a warrior.
It's true. It's true.
What's a great piece of advice you got?
3/4 of an answer is better than an answer and a half.
What's the worst piece of advice?
Do as you're told.
What's something toxic everyone should cut out of their lives?
There's room for improvement for all of us, right? We could all.
Hate.
I think hate's pretty. Judgment, I guess.
Judgment.
Yeah.
Something you long believed to be true and realized wasn't.
That people are honest. I'm really naive. I think when people tell you things, they're always the truth, and I've learned the hard way that people lie, and it always weirds me out.
Tell me something people don't know about you.
I think, most things people don't know about me.
Is there any deep secrets, Simon, that maybe today you can reveal?
There are deep secrets that will not be revealed today.
Okay, Simon, I accept that. This is not a trial. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks to my guest, Simon Sinek. The book is Together is Better, a little book of inspiration with great drawings. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Kingston's. There's a page in this book that you just smell it, you feel a lot better.